Welcome back to the attendees of the Digital Investment Week of the Malaysia's Tech Month 2021. Now, let us welcome our very first presenter of the day in a keynote session on the rise of digital global business services. Please welcome Dr. Mohan M. Avvari, Associate Professor of Strategy and Innovation, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Over to you, Dr. Mohan.
Thank you, Azrul. Good morning, everybody. And the usual new sentence now is, I hope everybody is able to hear me, and I'm not talking to myself. Firstly, as a good Asian, thank you to everybody at PCOM, MDEC, OM, CCAM, and particularly to my colleague, Dr. Mandy Sim, who's the real lady behind this the whole research report on talent management. I have the privilege of representing the Business School Dean, the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Dean, and Mandy in doing this session today. Right? So thank you, Mandy, for this opportunity. I was being given the task of the title of Rise of Digital GBS in Malaysia, but I wanted to give it a slight twist, and I'll come to that very quickly. I couldn't help but go to the Dilbert comics the moment we hear anything in management. And fortunately or unfortunately, something India always pops up when we do IT or outsourcing. And in this context, it's interesting, right, to see what happens even in digital GBS systems. And I'll come to that point. This is the quick agenda, and I hope to take 20 minutes and not 30 minutes. So we are back on track, and that's my attention span also. So I want to look at quickly what people have presented before, but I thought it's important to give tribute to what MDEC has been doing. I wanted to start with this. It's 20 plus years of MDEC and how it's evolved. And this has been my personal journey in Malaysia also. As a keynote speaker, I'm taking a little leeway in this. When I started I'm from India, incidentally, and I have my leg in two cities which have connections to Malaysia. Bangalore as an IT capital of India, Hyderabad as the alternate IT capital of India. Chennai and Delhi will get angry, but I have my two legs in the two main capitals. Why I'm telling this? In the first square that you see, when MSc was a nascent project, GBS or shared services was not the agenda at all. It was interesting that a lot of R&D and tech development was the push. Companies like BT Exact and all were there in Cyberjaya. And there was either one end of the corner with companies and the other end where I was in MMU, and nothing in between in Cyberjaya. And then came mid-2000, and suddenly the shared services and outsourcing sprung up. For conceptual or theoretical people like ourselves, it's interesting to see how a tech cluster evolves. And that's when I think Malaysia discovered its strengths, right? And the AT Kearney report will always be showing you Malaysia standing number 3 after India and China. I want to touch on that also as a few reflections for the audience, particularly from the industry and policymakers. So then came the shared services and outsourcing realm of the MDEC. And now, of course, it's a countrywide setup. But it was interesting also in the middle phase when HSBC was asked, I won't name the person, was asked to make a comment. What is the difference between Malaysia and Hyderabad in terms of the shared services? And there was an interesting comment. Attrition rates are very high in India, and attrition rates are very low in Malaysia as some sort of a cultural allusion. The Indian boys and girls would apparently jump companies. And in the city of Hyderabad, it's very interesting. There are cultural allusions to what is known as the Nizami culture, a laid-back culture. Now, I'm throwing these words because laid-back culture, and yet it's a shared services, global business services hub, Hyderabad. And Malaysia, I don't want to make any comments on culture. I'll leave it to you guys to reflect on it. But what was told about Malaysia was interesting, that even in a sector like shared services and outsourcing, when people remain for a long time, and if some of you are economists, you will know the word learning benefits, learning economies, and if people stay in an organization for a long time. And this is important because the theme for today is supposed to be the centers of expertise and centers of excellence, the importance of people remaining in an organization for a long time. I'm also from a school where in the university itself, we are supposed to be among the longest standing serving people in terms of the number of years in the organization. These are very interesting things for talent development. And even in the digital age, I think it's very important. And that's why I wanted to make this comments right now. The other slides, I don't want to repeat. All the relevant people have talked about it, but it's important to pay. It is important to pay this tribute. That MDEC and Malaysia, along with OM, CCAM, and other institutions like PCOM, have able to develop a very credible standing in the global scene for the GBS industry, and all those data become very important. I also wanted to bring to highlight these yellow highlighted material, yellow highlighted content, what companies are doing. And you will see words like R&D and tech, which is a very different rhetoric from the past. The agenda is, of course, digital GBS. To me, it's an oxymoron. GBS is obviously digital, but I suppose the focus of GBS was very much on finance and accounting, human resources related things, and so on. That was sort of a legacy from the outsourcing thinking, like companies giving up some non-core activities. But nevertheless, this was all done due to digital technologies. And during our research in the early days, nothing to do with GBS, but we were looking at how companies were evolving in the Cyberjaya cluster and the TPM cluster. One of the important factors was the infrastructure, so you can never run away from it. And this is 20 years ago. The availability of redundant lines, something which not many Asian countries can provide to industry players. But what was more interesting is the growth of the talent pool. Among our alumni is also a tech funder or a startup funder, an Australian gentleman, and he says he's seen the evolution of the digital talent in Malaysia. That's such a loosely used word. So we asked him, what is digital talent? People with capabilities in databases, developing databases, analytics. So using the data in their databases to make sense of it and provide data to the companies. So in my era, we called it decision support systems and then expert support systems, and now it's moved on to artificial intelligence. So all this has interestingly evolved over 2 decades, and that sets a fantastic stage for the next phase of GBS in Malaysia. It's a slightly validated opinion because of what we've been observing in Cyberjaya and in the other parts of the country with the GBS industry. As we move on, you see more interesting highlights, and we can't run away from the A to Kearney report or Kearney report. They seem to dictate what we do in the world, unfortunately or fortunately. Fortunately, because Malaysia and my home country seem to feature on the top. But it's not all rosy. So I wanted to highlight the word reflections, not so much to give a treatise on A.T. Kearney's report. So this slide, obviously, or this data shows Malaysia, India, China sitting at the top. But if you move on to the next slide, things start looking a little uncomfortable. And I suppose that's what MDEC is pushing to see how should be the rise of the digital GBS moving forward. Obviously, certain sectoral interests. Now, if you look at Malaysia or if you look at India, they've dropped. Getting a little kiasu on this, suddenly Singapore pops into the picture, which was not there in the previous slide. I'm just being cheeky, and we are competing always with the neighborhood country in terms of attracting FDI. It's always that, is Singapore or Malaysia better? But if you look at it from the point of view of the talent part, what could be missing? When we hear experts say there is talent, why are these numbers showing something different is curious. We have among our alumni, I'm using the term because these are the people I speak to get a pulse of what's happening in industry, who are extremely talented from a digital point of view or an IT point of view. Very interesting companies have evolved or they do interesting work. So what should be done to push Malaysia up on this digital resonance rank right now? I wanted to flip up across these data also a little bit, right? Where we are going wrong or where we should do more. And then move on to this issue. What the Kearney guys says. So again, India, Malaysia, Indonesia pop up. The digital resonance issues seem to be better. So is it the infrastructure? 20 years ago, Malaysian infrastructure at the 99.96 assurance seemed to be the game changer. Are we still in the same space? What's the level of infrastructure? And where's the ecosystem going are some of the questions that come up. But I want to come back to this issue, the digital GBS, the oxymoron, or is it really something to think of seriously? And I wanted to put a map also, right? But anyway, I nicked a few points from one of the PhD students, and this is not Mandy's. Mandy's PhD is even more interesting in terms of what should partnerships do, etc., in terms of mediating customer service. I should highlight that because in some of the opening speeches, the focus seemed to be heavily on the customer service elements. And in the post-pandemic world, we know very well digital customer experience is critical. As everybody gets online, every single company from food to shoes to any product. And now the property sector is now gaining also traction on getting online. So what should be the customer service is obvious. But another PhD candidate from our school had some interesting points. And you'll see words like asset specificity and very specifically on digital talent, uncertainty due to technology, and it should rather be uncertainty avoidance. And what should Malaysian companies do to get over these factors? Jeannie Ho's thesis was very specifically in finance and accounting related, offshoring, onshoring, etc. But still, these are certain valid points to consider in the context of digital GBS, a view to consider for the industry. As we move on, we know very well that the COVID-19 has shaken up, but I wanted to see the words agility, speed, and innovation were words I found on various GBS company sites. But the other favorite word that's emerged right now is resilience. Which are the companies that are resilient? And immediately the correlation goes to the word digital. So what should the GBS companies do to build resilient organizations, and not just about the efficiency elements or taking over processes and making it cost effective? And therefore, digitalization or digital transformation seems to be critical. I won't cast any aspersions or on other industry, but I'll take my own industry, the education sector. We are very proud, at least our Research and Knowledge Exchange head mentioned, that the Malaysia campus switched very quickly. It's got to do with the resilience and the abilities of the individuals, I believe, and not so much only the infrastructure. We still use a fairly difficult MS Teams, but our students also seem to get on better. I'm going to be a little cheeky. I know this is being recorded, but our UK campus seemed to lag behind in this issue. We still tell colleagues, Pravina, I'll tell you something simple but beautiful that you gave it to me as a clue. You asked me to fix my face in the screen, and that's a very important element. It may sound trivial, and we need to tell our UK colleagues also, could you please not look that way or look this way? These are important elements for engaging in the digital world, right? So as simple as that too, using softwares. I had a session where I had to switch 3 different platforms for the guest speaker to come on comfortably. Nobody in the Malaysia campus complained. We switched between MS Teams, Skype, and Zoom seamlessly in 5 minutes and got the guest speaker rolling. This is definitely something about the resilience of Asian people. I'm not anti any race or any country, but I'm seeing what are the capabilities, inherent capabilities for digital, whether it's GBS or anywhere. But coming back to the education sector, something that we have lagged behind. I started my work in MMU, and 2 decades ago, MMU wanted to go completely digital, to have recorded lectures, and sessions in the class would only be for discussions. They have partially done it, but somehow, I think as human nature would have it, we went back to classes. And now with the pandemic, every one of us is sort of forced to do an online session or a digital session. So for the education sector, what could be GBS companies' digital support? I found out for the executive education space, the top 2 universities in UK are working with GBS partners in delivering their executive education in a digital mode. Now, it should not be my capability to be able to do all these kind of things. Nothing wrong in my learning MS Teams or Zoom, but there's a lot more required in terms of interactivity. So that's my industry. So it'll be interesting to see in the different sectors, what could be the role of digital GBS? What kind of digital capabilities? The obvious being artificial intelligence, analytics for decision making, but I think it's a little more than that, particularly on the market side or the customer experience side. So we heard, because as we launch our executive education programs in sustainability realms, some of the feedback we got from Malaysian people who took the programs in the other UK universities is that they had a supporting partner and the delivery was excellent. And if you see it as a great customer experience in education, the role of GBS and digital GBS seem to be very prominent. Right, as we move on, these things pop up, right? As I was given this task 2 days ago, you get onto the let and start using the G word and move around, and you find these kind of things. So if you notice this all alludes to GBS industry working for efficiencies and always you moving towards cost reductions or speed related issues. Now it's very difficult to innovate when you start talking about efficiencies, because you're only looking at how quickly can you do things. Of course, that itself is an innovation, you may say, but the metrics won't really allow for creativity to become accepted into the market. So I wanted to explore a few more points. We shall be cued. I know I'm 13 minutes into the scheme. I want to go for 7 to 10 minutes maximum, right? Hazrul, please help me. So I wanted to put these terms. Now, innovation could be within the GBS organizations, and I'll link it to the opening sessions about customer experience, customer engagement. What could the GBS organizations themselves do? The remote work issue. How well are you remote working? Are you working out of Malaysia, out of out of India, out of China, and can you bring that to the clients is interesting. Innovation in terms of talent access, right? We're now going to talk about Malaysia and Malaysian talent and pitch Malaysia as the DGBS destination of the world, or one with digital resonance. But speaking to certain people from Finland, the labor exchanges now being planned in Finland are completely different, apparently. And I'm talking specifically with relation to digital talent, software developers, database specialists. They have labor markets where anybody from anywhere in the world with a single salary. So if you're an Indian or an American or a Russian, your salary is now going to be globalized. So you don't get an Indian pay or an American pay. These are apparently some of the plans. I made a mistake of not making notes about this and share it, but I'm sure you can find it in the Google world, what these labor exchanges are. So there are some implications for the GBS companies in terms of the digital talent and what innovations could be there. But I think even more important, as you support your client enterprises, we allude to the word open innovation. You are now part of the enterprise, multiple clients. Of course, you have to draw lines between these. What kind of digital expertise can you infuse into the clients in order for them to innovate? You could also start looking at very specific sectoral innovation issues. What sector do you operate? Very similar to the software industries, where you may start having verticals. I also see the great potential for service design, and that's again linking back to the opening speeches, the importance of customer experience in the post-pandemic world, and how digital GBS organizations can come into play. There's also the overall organization design of a company, when you have everything networked all over the world, and how this will be very important. I'm putting these points specifically because we just finished a study among small and medium enterprises, and we were very surprised that the SMEs, many SMEs in Malaysia, start owning their own digital enterprise, digital infrastructure. Small and medium enterprises, less than R1 million, want to buy their own servers for security purposes in an era where you're supposed to guarantee them security, provide them that reliability. Why is a small and medium company in food sector having a server inside its premises? So there seem to be plenty of opportunities for the digital GBS companies to support various sectors, right? So words like these, or the highlighted words like these, become even more important, right? GBS organizations, what they can do in the digital arena. I don't want to allude too much, but essentially we start moving into the term centers of expertise, or in the academic world, we call centers of excellence. The centers of excellence essentially can pull together without changing the structure of your organization. That's the way the academicians see it, right? It's a structural phenomena. You can bring in expertise from various functions without siloing them. And then you have something to offer to your clients as a thing, right? So I picked up the Indian bit now to see what India should be doing. And there are some interesting allusions again, how they can support various aspects of the GBS industry. I'll leave it to your reading pleasure. The writings are on the wall. As I move on, we also see that this could be a potential for centers for expertise. And I believe that's what MDEC is calling for. The digital plan, my digital agenda for the country, is also talking about the farming sector, the rural sector, the health sectors, right? And these are also interesting verticals or expertise that the GBS organizations can develop in the digital realm, I think. And I'd like to call on the industry to take on these things. Now, the AT Kearney report, again, does not have Malaysia or India in any of these graphs when it comes to the sectoral issues. That's a sad thing, right? So something to be done in terms of digital talent and digital sectoral talent, in my opinion. As I start closing down, I just try to do this. This is my interest. My interest is innovation systems, who are the actors, and what should be the linkages in order to develop the DGBS organizations. You shouldn't be doing it alone. Collaborations or partnerships should be the way. So where should you be partnering? Academic institutions. I didn't put something, but I want to also talk about the non-government organizations. And in Malaysia, there is an interesting set of knowledge non-government organizations who I think are doing a great job. And how could DGBS organizations collaborate with them? Hazrul, am I doing okay on time? Fantastic. So allow me to share a case study. There's an agro-tech company in Malaysia. It's emerging, and I believe they have quite a few competitors. When it becomes a tech company, the focus seems to be on how to use artificial intelligence, data or related to the crops, and improve crop yields with indoor farming, whatever the technologies they use. If you see on the left side, where all DGBS could contribute, SMEs, startups, but also in terms of of seeing how they could support these tech startups in the agri sector. Now, I put the green blob, and excuse the lines. It's just, it's not a researchy line, but I'm seeing various linkages that could take place. Could DGBS organizations offer interesting pricing models for a host of agri-tech companies to come together and take their services with the data analytics and let the agri-tech companies focus purely on the agricultural technology? It's interesting because the person who runs this firm, incidentally, is a friend also. And the husband and wife have to do data, have to do artificial intelligence, the biotechnology and the agrotechnology, and they're scrambling for people, for talent in the space. Now, if the DGBS organizations could relieve that of them, I'm sure the scaling up could be much more. And they have ASEAN ambitions to deliver products and their services across these countries. One example. The second example is this. This is another SME, and also in some sort of space where DGBS could help them. I should feature their brand. This is Dr. Kong Shoes. It's a small retail company, and they had to go online fully due to the pandemic, losing all their malls. And the owner ends up using WhatsApp to quality monitor her inventory. Now, what could a DGBS company do to support such micro SMEs in the retail space? And this is a retail country, massive retail country. So I thought of presenting these two cases to stimulate the thinking. And again, I think it also alludes to linkages in the digital ecosystem. Where could be the pricing that the SMEs and the startups could offer, and what kind of services they could provide, right? So moving forward, I also wanted to start talking about the contributions. Malaysia is one of the big signatories to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and it reports regularly on those issues. You will start seeing that the big corporations of Malaysia have already started putting out their net zero aspirations and commitments. And everywhere, the biggest issue seems to be data, the availability of data for the companies, past, present, and future. And if you hear the word scope 3, the supplier companies' emissions data, there seems to be endless possibilities for the DGBS companies to enter the sustainability realm. So we shall call this the S word, the sustainability word, and I want to start on those issues, right? So it's quite interesting to see how they're all there, the big players in the market, the associations, the industry players. And I'm so happy that Nottingham is the educational institution right now being featured in the DGBS forum today. Well, we have to sell, right? We're all salesmen these days. But I also wanted to say that the MDEC, the CCM, CCAMs, OMs, I think you should start engaging with the non-government organizations community in Malaysia. I'm particularly favorable because I'm aware of RIMBA and TRCRC and how they've developed themselves as knowledge institutions. And if you pull them together in the sustainability space, it would be very interesting to see how the DGBS organizations to come together in this realm. And could Malaysia lead on the sustainability there? So random pickings from the internet, it's very nice to see that for the size of Malaysia, the circle is fairly big, relatively speaking, in terms of GBS features. But I wanted to allude to the word R&D. And that's where I think also Malaysia should start moving into sustainability in R&D. I wanted to leave with this. I'm afraid I don't have the link in my hurry to pick this up. It's interesting how one GBS company talks about its Singaporean offices versus its Malaysian offices. The issue of culture that I talked about. Here they're alluding to the multi-language capabilities. But I think in terms of talent, there is some much more depth to that than just the multiple languages. I'm sure a Filipino or an Indian somewhere along the way could learn Mandarin, albeit the accents. These were some of the complaints, right? But nevertheless, there is a lot more to the talent. There's a lot more to digital talent that could be developed, and we could see the rise of DGBS in a more interesting way moving forward for Malaysia's competitiveness. And I hope to see in the next digital resonance, India, Malaysia, because these are my two legs right now located in, rising back to the top two, and of course, along with the other countries. Thank you very much. I'd like to close now. And while this is not a physical session, but I think it's very apt that it's a digital session, given that this is the rise of digital GBSs in Malaysia. Thank you, Hazrul, and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. Great presentation. Okay, I myself started my personal banking career previously in HSBC Cyberjaya. So started out in customer service, and then I moved on to another MNC. I worked based in Penang. My project team was in Singapore. My UAT testing team was in Hyderabad. But we were doing projects for China. So it's a global workforce. And I believe that you're talking about talent. Talent here
yeah,
in Malaysia, don't look at GBS as a second rate. Okay, when you look at the banking side, HSBC, Citibank, Standard Chartered, all of them have those global business centers here in Malaysia,
very
different
true.
types of departments.
Yeah,
But maybe the main issue is that maybe they might not be getting the same benefits or remuneration as
mm,
compared to the members within the Berhad side.
mm,
But the opportunities are there. So much you can learn, so much you can expand instead of just looking
yeah,
at into your own country. I think that is one of
yeah,
the best things to me as a GBS product. I feel that is what our talent needs to change that mindset. Thank you again, Dr. Mohan, for your presentation. Loved it. Okay, thank you. Hope to see you
not
again.
at all, not at all. Azrul, do we have a minute? Do we have a minute or should we close?
We have about if from the timer, we have about 3 minutes. Anything else you want to add on?
No, no, I wanted to also say the interesting thing that MTech had done in the past, promoting the region. I think that's
Mhm.
where the companies should come together and support MTech. I don't want to, there will always be limitations for any organization. But even 20 years ago, Malaysia coming onto the map with Cyberjaya was because of what we know as macro marketing that MTech had done.
Yes.
Dr. Sumitra is missing today. That's when I first met her also on putting Malaysia onto the global map in the tech space. So these are
Mm-hmm.
certain interesting things, the roles of the different players in the ecosystem. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, the MSC with Cyberjaya,
Correct.
KLCC, KLA, all these mega
Yeah,
projects bringing Malaysia to the world. Okay,
that's right.
okay, thank you, Doctor. All right, we will now be moving forward to our next session. It will be beginning shortly, so do click join session and complete the survey for each of the session for us to continuously serve you better. Next, we have a panel session. See you then.
Okay. See you.